I'm sure when you walk in the door, they probably got a great big statue of James Buchanan. Just remind yourself.
Was he a president?
He was the president right before Lincoln. Mm-hmm. Worst president we've ever had.
I can't name any presidents.
Adams.
2 of them.
Times 2.
Come on,
You're not serious.
You can name at least. You
I
have to
like
be able to name 10.
I can go in order. I can go in order.
I know.
All right, so get your boom out and let's
just
do
name
it.
10.
We gotta hear it.
I know you
Derek's,
can name 10.
Derek
Everyone
knows
name
it.
10.
So I want to
verify.
Okay, hang on.
Okay, we're doing 2 different competitions here.
Well, this isn't a competition for him. This is just he's going to the gym right now and just working out his history.
That's
brain
how I
muscle.
work
Yeah.
out.
So
I don't do any other kind of workout.
Grover Cleveland.
All right.
Was he the fat one?
Yes.
The one that got stuck in the bathtub?
No, that was Taft.
Taft.
Taft
I was
is-
going to say Taft. Don't worry. William Taft, right?
Okay.
George Washington,
Okay.
Abraham Lincoln, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton,
Brendan Howe.
and how many more? One more?
Yeah. You need one more.
Ronald Reagan. I can't say
Doesn't get
nobody
an
past
Adams.
that.
Doesn't get Thomas Jefferson. Doesn't get Joe Biden.
Okay.
Doesn't get.
No. Well,
I feel like I need
Nixon.
to hold on. I feel like this is
See, I
not
told
the
you you
right.
could get 10.
This is probably isn't the right sound, but I got this.
Like a newscast.
All right.
We should do like a breaking
Derek?
news segment every show now.
presidents in order.
Okay.
We ready?
I'm keeping track. Yeah.
George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison,
Mm-hmm.
James Monroe,
Mm-hmm.
John Quincy Adams,
Yes.
Andrew Jackson,
Ding.
Martin Van Buren,
Ooh.
I almost forget Van Buren.
William Henry Harrison,
Mhm.
John Tyler, James Polk, Zachary Taylor,
What?
Yeah.
Um, Millard Fillmore,
Yes.
Franklin Pierce,
Mm-hmm.
James Buchanan, Lincoln, Andrew Johnson, Garfield,
Mm-hmm.
Chester Arthur,
Yep.
Just what?
Grover Cleveland,
Yes.
Benjamin Harrison, Grover Cleveland again,
Grover Cleveland, 1885 to 1889, and then you're right, because they put the number. You're correct. I'm sorry, that's my bad.
They didn't include a second.
So, but yeah, they just
Okay.
put the dates, and I didn't look to the right.
Okay,
You're
so
correct. You're correct.
Cleveland a second time,
Yep.
McKinley,
Correct.
Teddy Roosevelt,
Yes.
Taft, Woodrow Wilson, Harding,
Yes.
Coolidge,
Mm-hmm.
Hoover,
Yeah.
FDR,
Yep.
Truman,
Correct.
Eisenhower,
Ding.
Kennedy,
Yeah.
LBJ,
Mm-hmm.
Nixon,
Yep.
Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush,
What?
Clinton,
Yes.
Bush, Clinton, Bush,
Mm-hmm.
Obama, Trump,
Don't mess up.
Biden, Trump.
Wow, that was impressive.
I'd probably get about half of that. I think I could get 20 to 25.
Welcome to Eye on Sports, where we delve into the biggest Butler County sports topics. I'm your host, Butler Eagle Sports writer Derek Pyda. Joining me are fellow sports writer Brendan Howe and Eagle Sports editor Jake Murda Adams.
The best is his reaction, Brendan's reaction. Who?
I've never heard a few of those. I don't think I've heard of.
Well,
I don't
Millard
remember hearing
Fillmore
those.
was, he
No,
was
that
from
guy.
Buffalo.
That guy had
He goes, that guy.
a weird enough name where I'd remember that. But Chester Taylor.
Chester Arthur.
We have
Chester Taylor was a running back.
Multiple presidents have 2 first names.
Zach Taylor, right?
Grover Cleveland, not to be confused with the
Zachary
pitcher.
Grover Cleveland, 1885 to 1889, and then again in 1893 to 1897.
Did you know that Zachary Taylor died after eating a bad bowl of cherries?
Wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
One of several to just die of illness.
Imagine your
In
baby
office.
comes out and you say, "I want to name him Grover." Millard.
Grover Howe.
I also always forget how many presidents are in between both Adamses and how many presidents are in between both Roosevelts. I always think it's fewer than it actually is.
Yeah, there's I'm always online looking for cool stuff. Of course, what I think is cool and what you think is cool are two different things. But there's a picture. There is a picture of Lincoln's funeral. Like after Lincoln died, they kind of like paraded his body around the country on a train.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like a funeral
Yeah,
shroud.
I remember
type.
that.
And there's a picture of Teddy Roosevelt and his older brother leaning out of a window. I think it was somewhere in New York, like kind of looking down at the train. But there's Teddy Roosevelt as like a 5-year-old kid looking down.
Wow. I did not know that.
So that was the cool thing you found on one night?
Well, yeah,
just
yes.
perusing
When I get
the
home,
internet?
it's just me and the dog. So I got to find a way.
I used to like history class. Like it was probably, other than English, my favorite
We could tell.
class. See, you can learn something, but I think that school, and I've been on the record as saying this, I think school is more a test of memory than it is of smarts.
I don't think you're wrong
so
all the time.
If I don't need something in my head, like you could ask me what I wrote last month for us, and I probably won't remember because it's just not information that I need to know at the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one's gonna ask me. No one's gonna come up to me with a $100 bill and say, "If you name all the presidents, I'll give you this." And if they do, then
Come on, bring them my way. I'll take
I think it's why I liked math so much in school because it was literally problem solving.
you liked math.
Oh, I was really good at math. Yeah.
I had a
I mean, ask me to take a Calc 2 test again and I will bomb it. Yeah, I haven't done anything
Yeah.
math related since high school.
I had a
Early
math
college.
class my first semester of college that made me debate whether I wanted to be in college or not. Like it was that tough. It was like lattice math. Like
We had some major happenings going on in high school sports the last few days. We're going to kick it to Brendan first because he's got a state champion in the pool to talk about.
yeah, Kira Schreckengoss from Freeport. She won a state title, I think, in the 100 butterfly, if I remember correctly. Like I said, I don't have a great memory. She had to swim in 3 different events in both the prelims and the finals. So the fact that she kind of had enough energy to do what she did, I thought was really interesting. And just a really cool story because Freeport's been a pretty strong swimming program, even without a pool to practice in up until this year. She's their first, according to her and her mom, her coach Cheryl Schreckengost. She's the first state champion swimmer in Freeport history. So I thought that was really interesting and a cool story to write.
Also in the pool, Luke Lamb, the North Catholic student who swims for Mars because of the co-op. He won the 100 backstroke title. This was boys AAA. Kind of the backstory to that, though, is on Friday he swam in the 50 freestyle. Just last month he won a Whippeal title in the 50 freestyle, and on Friday at States he placed 8th, which, for most kids, an 8th place medal, they're happy with it, but he was not happy with it. He entered the state meet again as a district champion, knew he was capable of more, had to settle for the 8th place medal in the 50 free. So the next day on Saturday, he came back with a vengeance, so to speak, and won the backstroke with a time that places him on the National Federation of High Schools honor roll, which is like every high school in the country. The top, I don't know what is it, the top 25 or top 50 times?
Sounds right, yeah.
From around the country, and his time was good enough for that. So he's a senior. Closes his high school career with a state championship. Also in the water, Jake, we had some pretty cool news coming out of the diving.
Yeah, we had both Mars's Maya Lee and Seneca Valley's Allie Waters who medaled at districts 2 weeks before. They flipped positions, basically. Lee finished 6th at states, and Waters finished 4th at states. Now, Lee was battling, Brendan did the story on this on Friday, Lee was battling an illness of some sort that knocked her on her butt pretty good from what it sounded like Thursday into Friday. So they were just focused on, being consistent, give her as much rest in between dives and during warm-ups as possible so she had as much energy as possible. So 6th for them, for Mars and for Lee, was a pretty good win considering what she was going up against. And Waters, she's a junior, so there's a good chance that she could be building off of this going into next year, looking to do better than I think it was 6th at Whippeals 2 weeks ago, and now 4th at state. So we could be covering another medalist as well with her next year. The one other mention is also Isaac Barton from Freeport, the para swimmer. He finished champion in both the para 50 and the para 100 free. So we had three state champions this week at Bucknell,
And 2 from Freeport.
2 from Freeport.
Also on the basketball court, both North Catholics still alive. Brendan, tell us about the game you covered on Saturday, North Catholic girls against Blackhawk.
Oh, I walked into the gym first and foremost, and you could tell the humidity in it. I was like, this is weird because obviously it's been warmer out today. I walked outside and I had to put a hoodie on, the Seattle hoodie.
Noted Seahawks fan, Brendan Howe.
Hey, I really liked them during the Legion of Boom days. Anyways, I walked in, I realized it was really hot, and not just for me, it was for the players. I was sitting at the scores table, and at halftime, or right out of halftime, I heard North Catholic's coach Molly Rotman say to one of the officials, he asked, "Is it hot in here?" Just like make conversation with her, and like kind of be cordial. And she goes, "It feels like it's 1,000 degrees." And Blackhawks coach Greg Houston, who I covered him after the Whitfield Championship that North Catholic beat them, that we have on our wall up there last year. And he always, when they lose North Catholic, makes sure to mention that his school's a public school. He doesn't bash North Catholic for being a private school, but he makes sure to mention that he's proud of his public school. He said that it was 1,000 degrees in there. It's like a very veiled shot. Like if you're listening closely, you know what he's saying. But
Oh, yeah.
I
heard it. I heard it loud and clear.
I wasn't gonna put that in the story because it's just stupid. But anyways, I heard Molly say that it was 1,000 degrees. Then after the game, he said it was 1,000 degrees too. So I talked to Brady Wayner, and she said that she was like dripping sweat in warm-ups. And I kind of connected the heat was on things. It's hot in the gym. They're down by 12 in the second quarter. Just they can't figure anything out. From then on, there was just one girl on Blackhawk, Aubrey Hupp, who's like a bigger forward post player presence. She scored most of her points, or most of her team's points in the second half because just no one could help her. They just kept feeding her the ball in the post and hoping she either got fouled or made a layup. And North Catholic had their options with making turnovers and playing in transition. And they erased that 12-point deficit, I think, early in the third quarter, and from there kind of never looked back. There were some lead changes, but they moved on.
So you covered a girls' game where where North Catholic was down 12 points in the second quarter. I covered the boys' game where North's boys were down 12 points in the third quarter against Cathedral Prep, and Cathedral Prep is a very good team. I covered them in the first round of the state playoffs against Knock, and I'm thinking to myself, man, this Cathedral Prep team's really taking it to North Catholic. Well, from like 4 minutes left in the third quarter to the end of regulation through overtime, the game went to overtime. North Catholic was obviously the much better team. Down the stretch, making more baskets, holding on to the ball better. They end up beating Cathedral Prep 78-75. So now that leaves this Friday and Saturday. The boys are playing – who is it?
Berks Catholic.
Berks Catholic at James Buchanan. There he is, James Buchanan again. James Buchanan High School, which is out in Franklin County, same county as Chambersburg. Friday night, Berks Catholic against North Catholic boys in the state semifinal. And on Saturday – the girls are playing Lansdale Catholic, and I think a lot of people thought that if North Catholic made it this far, they would end up in a rematch with Oakland Catholic.
Yeah,
Oakland
I
Catholic.
thought so.
Oakland Catholic and North Catholic played each other 3 times this year, twice in the regular season because they're in the same section. They split those games, but then Oakland Catholic beat up North Catholic pretty well in the Whitfield playoffs. North Catholic did its part by getting to the state semifinals, but Oakland Catholic gets crushed by Lansdale Catholic from outside of Philly. So that semifinals being played Saturday, 1 o'clock at Chambersburg High School. So you and I, where we're going to be, you're going to be Friday, I'm going to be Saturday. We're only about 12 miles apart. So we get to see the beautiful wilds and
Yep.
wilderness of
And I get to go without
Franklin
high
County.
beams. I don't have high beams on my car right now, so I'll drive carefully.
One thing two things worth noting with the girls' game. Blackhawk was the defending state champ, and Aubrey Hupp is already 1,000-point scorer as a junior, one of the best players on that team last year that won the state title, and now Lansdale Catholic, with what it just did to Oakland Catholic, looks like a state championship contender. So look at what North Catholic's got to go through.
If Derek watches North Catholic lose, that means I don't got to go to Chocolate Town. So
well, if they both get there, I got to go out.
yeah.
Chambersburg, one little note about them, has arguably the coolest trophy in high school wrestling. My wife covered the Chambersburg Trojan Wars for 3 years. They started it in like 2017, I think it was. Obviously, with the name Chambersburg Trojan Wars, can you guess what their trophy was?
Is it peaches?
I'm just
Basket of
disappointed.
peaches.
No.
Chambersburg peaches.
A Trojan
Get your
horse.
Chambersburg peaches.
It was a Trojan helmet.
Oh.
As the trophy. And the kid, you see a bunch of gold medals at different, wrestling meets and whatnot. The kids would be, I never covered this event, Mallory did, so I'm just relaying this through third person here, but she was like, the kids actually enjoyed getting this. They would take photos with this trophy because it was the coolest thing.
I like Chambersburg. But around here, you go to like fruit markets in the middle of the summer, you always see signs that say Chambersburg peaches. I just wonder, are those peaches really from Chambersburg?
Yeah.
I mean, there are peaches down there, but I mean, people, they want to buy Chambersburg peaches. So, if you stick Chambersburg peaches on a sign, people are just going to come and buy them.
I've always wondered if it was like, if there's like a Chambersburg, Georgia that I don't know about, and they like send them up here.
There are, I think the growing season for them might be a little shorter down in Chambersburg, but there are Chambersburg peaches. I just wonder how many of the peaches sold around here are actually Chambersburg peaches, or if they're just brought up from Georgia and you write Chambersburg peaches.
Chambersburg, Pennsylvania is known for its juicy peaches, and Franklin County orchards are known for producing them throughout the summer. Boom.
I did not.
And they're not ready till late to July to early
this.
September.
Chambersburg peaches.
I did not.
They
know
won't be
this.
ready when you're there, though.
Now, one of these days, I'm going to
They're
come
not
in
ready
with
yet.
I'm going to come in with a bushel full of Chambersburg peaches for you, and you can share them with Bailey.
Bring them back from state track.
Slurp up
There
some
you go,
peaches.
state track.
We'll make you some pie.
Peach pie is pretty good.
It'll be a long weekend, and we potentially, as of this recording, we don't know for sure, we potentially could have more championship games to cover on Saturday with hockey.
Yes. Tonight, Brendan has the Seneca Valley boys against South Fayette down at the Lemieux Complex
In the Penguins Cup?
Penguins Class 3A Penguins Cup. And after that, I got Mars against Avonworth in the Class 1A Penguins Cup. If either team wins, they go to the state championship, which is at RMU this year. So, obviously, there's years where it's out near Philly. So this year, the West gets a break. The championships are being played next weekend at Robert Morris University's Island Sports Center. So good luck to both Mars and Seneca in getting there. All right, so as winter sports are winding down, we got the spring sports season kicking off. We're each working on previews or kind of top players to watch in each sport. Brennan, what have you found out about the spring sports, the coaches that you're talking to so far, as the teams and the players to watch this year?
So I've talked to a few lacrosse coaches in particular. Knock, I learned I do have their player to watch, but more with them, I want to focus on the fact that we've covered them in the past few years. I covered them playing Mars last year, and it was not a fair matchup. I think it was like 29-2 at the end of the game. I learned that they're not a sanctioned sport by the high school yet. They're still a club sport, and for kids to play, it costs over $860, which is a lot for someone to pay. That's a lot for like anything. Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. You cut that out.
That just sounded so gross right into the mic.
Yeah, so start all that over.
Start it over.
Also, you're talking boys, right?
Yeah.
Point that out. I don't think he's mentioned
Right.
boys.
So I've talked to a few coaches of lacrosse and Butler and Knock, and I want to kind of focus on Knock first here with the fact that they're still a club sport. They're not sanctioned by the high school, so they have to pay for all their own gear. I'm sure that kind of entails transportation too. Kids have to pay $860 a piece. They only have 2 seniors this year. I think they have somewhere around 20 sophomores. It's a very young team. They brought a coach that was the head coach at Teal. He's coached at other stops, including North Allegheny, in the past, and he plans on being here for the next 3 years, but he said his main goal is to kind of get them to be sanctioned. It has to go through the school board and stuff. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on. And then Butler lost Aiden Davis. We've talked about him on the show before, where I tried to cover him in flag football, and he beat me very soundly. They
No
lose
surprise
him.
there.
They lose him. He's scoring goals in Division I lacrosse already as a freshman, kind of bench player there. But they are going to replace him by the aggregate, I think. That's the way that their coach made it sound. They had a game on Friday, and he had a few players kind of stand out to him. They have a very experienced goalie. And Mars, just kind of like North Catholic basketball, Mars lacrosse is a team, both boys and girls, that we're always following around come the start of the summer for state playoffs. So that's something to keep an eye on there. But as I keep reaching out to coaches, like I said, lacrosse is kind of the main one I've talked to at this point. But we'll know more for the previews that come out, I think, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, right?
Yep. Beginning of April.
Mars boys lacrosse, to let our viewers know that listeners too that aren't aware of this, Mars boys have won 8 straight Whitfield titles. They have played in the last 4 state championship games. So, and who knows what would have happened in 2020. That season was nixed because of COVID. So from 21 to 24, Mars boys lacrosse have made the state championship every year. They won in 22, lost in 21, 23, and 24. But you're talking about a program that is used to playing until the very end. I mean, the last 4 years, they take it until the very end to the state championship. So we'll see.
They don't have Enzo Greco.
They don't have Enzo Greco, so they got to replace him and a few other really good players. But the thing is, Mars has such a good youth program. Like those kids, by the time they're in 7th, 8th grade and they're ready to come up in the varsity, they are so knowledgeable about the game because the youth program's so strong. So we'll see how they manage to get by with different faces to replace guys like Enzo Greco. But I would not put it past Mars to make another long run this year. They're a very good program. Jake, spring-wise, what do you have for us?
So working my way through boys volleyball and track and field. Speaking of Mars, we've got their team, I believe, made state quarterfinals last year. Everything's fuzzy to me. I just started running.
Boys volleyball?
Yeah.
It was semifinals.
State semifinals.
Derek Piatek.
Derek Piatek, you read my mind. He's back. St. Francis commit. He led the team, or he has the program record in kills. So obviously they got a force back there. I think there was a few guys back from that team. I think they were a pretty junior heavy team, if I remember correctly, from last year. I covered one of those games. So they're definitely. I would think they're going to be the best team in our county yet again. Going to contend for a Whitfield title. Probably make states again. We've got Seneca Valley's Jordan Hoover. He had 220 kills, 135 blocks last year, going to Robert Wesleyan University, senior middle hitter for Seneca Valley. Butler, we know, should have a decent team this year. On the track side of things, I'm a little bit deeper into those previews right now, which for readers and listeners who don't know, if you haven't subscribed to the Butler Eagle, $18 a month for digital print subscription, we're going to have this stuff coming out around the beginning of April. Might have 1 or 2 of these things in later April. Derek already has his boys tennis stuff up today, Monday, online for the top boys tennis players to watch. But on track and field, we have Butler's got most of the decent distance runners with Maddie McGarrett. Ethan Thomas is going to be running like that 1600 range. He's probably going to be on a couple of the relays. Also, Josie Slazinski, she just started running the 400 indoor this season. Did pretty well, made it to the state indoor championships, but she's also a high jumper, runs relays. And they also have defending Whitfield pole vault champ Aubrey Rock, who had a 12-foot jump or pole vault last year. But they may not even be some of the best athletes. A very solid, probably the best team we have, but there are some pretty good individual athletes elsewhere. Seneca Valley's got some really good field athletes in Dakari Payne. He jumped 6'1" in the high jump last year and Whitfields to finish 6th, but he's now up to 6'5" personal best in indoor, where he finished 4th in the state. Aubrey Erdos is a pole vault contender for Whitfield and state this year as well. She has an 11.6 in the indoor season. She qualified for states there. North Catholic is probably where we're going to see most of our sprinter talent this year with Sieva Cresta. She's a Duquesne commit. She won gold in the 4x1 and also got medals in the 100 and 200 last year. Daphne Floral, she's a Davidson commit. Again, 4x1, also a long jump medalist. And then we've got Freeport's Michael Braun. We all know him from cross-country season. He medaled last year in the 1600 and 3200 at Whitfields and states. He's back again, going to compete in both of those. I think he's got a pretty decent shot to win gold or at least be top 3 or 4 in both districts and states again as well. He won cross-country gold this year, and I believe finished 2nd at states this year as well. He's been a little bit banged up throughout most of his senior year, but the Penn State commit has always been in there, whether it's been cross-country, indoor season, or outdoor season.
Always in the mix. You mentioned Dakari Payne from Seneca Valley. One note I do know about him, because I did a story on this back in, I think it was a couple weeks after the state meet is he is the only boy in Butler County to end up in the top 5 in all 3 jumps last year on our honor roll. The final honor roll, which appeared like a week after the state meet, triple jump, high jump, long jump, Takari Payne was the only male in the county to appear top 5 in all 3 of those. So I think he's primed for a big year. Regarding the boys tennis season, you said my preview ran in today's paper, Monday's paper. Mars has 2 really good players to kind of build around, Ethan Palmer and Cal Johnson. A really good foundation to kind of build around and try to get the rest of the team to the point where maybe doubles teams can make a run in the postseason. The thing is, with Mars, they are in an incredibly tough section. They play in the same section with North Allegheny, who is the defending Whitfield team champion in 3A. And just this year, Sewickley Academy, which was a 2A power for years because of increased enrollment, they've been moved up to AAA. So those are 2 teams that Mars is going to have to contend with in their own section, North Allegheny and Sewickley Academy. North Catholic also looks to be a strong team at the start of this season with leaders Alex Weber and Justin Garvey. Now, they're in 2A, so they're one class below Mars, but I think both teams have the capability of making some noise this year. It just depends on how their kids perform when they go up against the other top players from the section. So we'll see how things turn out. But boys tennis actually started last week. Good luck to all 5 of our area teams.
Absolutely.
Freeport tennis all the way.
So the NFL draft is coming up, Derek. What I think is one of the most exciting events of the year. It's always unpredictable. I'm taking that night off just to be able to watch the first round of that. So there wasn't always a draft, as you know, right? So there was one player in the early 1930s who teams really wanted in the NFL and were bidding for, and his bidding war led to the inception of the NFL draft. Who was that player?
You're saying 1930s.
Early 1930s.
1930s. Because I know one player that definitely comes to mind, but he definitely played in the NFL beginning in the 1920s. Okay, I get a few minutes to think about
I told you I was coming harder at this.
Okay. I get a few minutes to think about it. Unlike the last 4 weeks where I actually answered the question before you got done asking it, we're going to take a few minutes here. Beyond Brendan with Butler.
Welcome to our weekly segment, Beyond Butler, where we talk about something outside of Butler County, whether that be professionally or collegiately. It's the time of year where we talk about the Steelers, kind of year-round, hopefully here.
So it's a month that ends in Y or H,
a month
or
that ends in Y,
L or E, just any month whatsoever.
Yep. So, Derek, you've been watching the Steelers for a long time. Can you recall an off-season with a cloudier quarterback situation for this team? And Jake, is there any kind of comparison that you have with the Eagles that you can think of?
Well, I guess I'll go first. I guess I would say 1996 was a year where the quarterback situation was a little bit murky entering the season. At that point, as you know, the last game of the 95 season was Super Bowl 30.
Neil O'Donnell,
who I want to point out, played a great AFC championship game to help the Steelers get there, but in the Super Bowl, he threw 2 huge picks to Larry Brown, who ended up winning MVP the Super Bowl. Thanks, Neil O'Donnell. And in the offseason, Neil O'Donnell went to the Jets as a free agent. So entering the 1996 season, these are the quarterbacks the Steelers had. Jim Miller, who was a second-year player. In his rookie year of 95, that Super Bowl year, I think he attempted about 60 passes. He was a backup. Cordell Stewart, who came onto the scene as Slash in 1995. He was throwing a few passes. He was running. He was catching, but he was definitely not quite ready to be a starter yet. And the other guy was the answer to last week's trivia question, who was the first free agent quarterback the Steelers ever signed in free agency, which was Mike Tomczak. The Steelers began that season with Jim Miller at quarterback, 1996, and he went down to Jacksonville. The Steelers lost. That was Jacksonville's second year in the league. And the Steelers lost, and that was Jim Miller's only start in the Steelers' career. They benched him after that. Cordell again wasn't ready, so they went with Mike Tomczak the rest of the season, and they got to the playoffs, beat the Colts in the first round, and went up to New England in the Fog Bowl game.
Is that Pete Carroll's New England team?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me. It was horrible. Cordell Stewart entered that game after the Steelers got down. He was 0 of 10 passing.
Oh.
Mike Tomczak wasn't much better. So that was a year that the New England Patriots ended up going to the Super Bowl and playing Green Bay. Actually, that was Bill Parcells with the Patriots. That was his last year with the Patriots. But just that season, the Steelers had a second-year quarterback, Jim Miller, who they really didn't have much confidence in. As far as starting, Cordell Stewart, who was better in the role of slash. He wasn't a starting quarterback at that point. And Mike Tomczak, who had spent the last 3 seasons with the Steelers at that point as a backup. So what do you do? What do you go with? They ended up going with Jim Miller for one game. Okay, he stinks, where he's out of here. And they ended up playing Mike Tomczak the rest of the year. But I think at this point, back then, about 4 or 5 months before the season, I don't know. I don't think they had things set in their mind, like who's going to be the starting quarterback. This is the guy we're going to go with. And I think that's proven by the fact that the guy who started the season for them, Jim Miller, spent one game as a starter, and he got yanked. So that's all I got. Jake, what do you got?
I'm going through as you're talking, and I'm thinking slash, and I'm going, who has the best nicknames in Steelers franchise history? And I've got Big Ben, slash, Mean Joe Green, and I'm trying to put together a top 5 of like the best
Tasmanian
Steelers.
Devil, Troy Polamalu, the Bus.
The Bus. I forgot
Jerome
about the
Bettis.
Bus. That's a good one. Any other? What would be a 5th?
Well, you had
Debo.
You had Dwight Mad Dog White.
Duck Hodges.
Dwight Mad Dog White actually held me at a carnival one time when I was like 2 years old.
Wow.
And I'm still here. I'm
the
still
one that
living
shot
in
at the.
No, that was Ernie Holmes. Ernie Holmes, Fats. They called him Fats, and L.C. Greenwood was called Hollywood Bags. So take your pick.
Those aren't good.
Nope.
Anyway, I think the closest the Eagles have been was the Nick Foles, Mike Vick year, I think in 2013, 2014, Chip Kelly, back when we all thought he was a genius, and turns out he was just kind of a jerk.
Hey,
who could run
don't
an
talk
offense.
about my former Ohio State offensive coordinator that way.
He is a better offensive coordinator than he is a head coach of a pro football team. They had Nick Foles and they had Mike Vick that year. I was not a fan of Mike Vick, period. His athleticism was phenomenal, especially his Falcons days, but I as an owner of pit bulls growing up,
I have mixed feelings on Michael Vick. I really liked his talent, but I couldn't imagine treating dogs that way.
do appreciate he has gone through a pretty good reclamation project, but at that time, I was very bitter. Nick Foles had like a 7 touchdown game the year before that, I think against the Raiders, which tied a NFL record. Then would leave the Eagles a year after this and then come back years later and win a Super Bowl because of just the way things work. It felt like that. I remember that year not being so much about like, oh my God, we don't have a quarterback. It was just, how is Chip Kelly going to make this work? Which one is, like, everyone thought he's going to go with Vic because athletic quarterback is what he had been doing at Oregon all this time, and with the RPO being such a new thing to the NFL, a lot of people thought that would be the way he would go. But he showed that he could coach kind of a statue at quarterback in Foles, so it was just more intrigue around what Boy Genius was going to do as coach than it was really like who was the answer at quarterback. I think everyone kind of assumed he would figure it out. That was when Eagles fans still liked Chip Kelly, so we just kind of thought he would figure it out one way or the other when we were all going to be hoorah, go Birds the whole way down. Hoorah! And it kind of blew up in our face 2 years later, and then Doug Peterson led us to a Super Bowl. So I don't have, in my lifetime, much to compare this to.
I grew up, obviously.
You did?
My entire childhood / teenage years / into adulthood was Ben Roethlisberger quarterback. Literally, he was the quarterback from the time I was 6 years old until the time I was working here, which is a crazy level of consistency. I wasn't always the biggest fan of him, especially like you mentioned the sort of moral conundrum you had with Vic. Ben Roethlisberger didn't really do much better as a person at that time. I'm still very skeptical of him as a person, but
there goes our shot of ever getting him to come on the show.
I never realized through that whole process how hard it is with And I mean, I know you saw that in the 80s after Terry Bradshaw left, into the 90s and early 2000s with Tony Maddox, up until Ben came, basically. I never realized how hard it is to find a franchise quarterback, and it sucks. Like, it's so sad that I'm at the point with this where, like, I'm like, I don't want Aaron Rodgers. Throw Mason Rudolph out there. Like, I just someone that isn't a complete jerk like Aaron Rodgers is, and he's holding the Steelers hostage. That's what I was going to ask, was like, can you think of a time where the Steelers would have let a player have so much say, a player that's not even on their team, have so much say in what their plans are going forward? Like,
look at the Vikings with Brett Favre back in when
Yeah.
Brad Childress showed up with
The
his
Jets
SUV.
with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, it's
The Jets with Brett Favre.
Let's face it. I mean, the owners are the owners, but the league truly is. It's kind of driven by the top players in the league, just like baseball. And even though there's a salary cap in football, you saw what Aaron Rodgers did to Mike McCarthy in Green Bay. He's basically the reason that guy got fired.
yeah.
Mhm.
So the top players basically have the steering wheel, so to speak. I mean, obviously the salary cap has a lot to do with it, but the top players have a lot more say in football than I think they should, honestly.
The one thing I will say is, like, take all the other factors out of it. If Aaron Rodgers wants to take his time to decide, it's his right. Like, there's nothing wrong with this necessarily. It's a team's job to figure out what's best for the team. It's Rodgers' job to figure out
Right.
what the heck does he want to do.
Yeah, the Steelers could right now, they could call Rodgers up and say, "Look, we're done with this. You're not gonna be a Steeler next year," and they could move forward in the direction they want to move to. They're the ones making the decision that they're not going to do that.
It's kind of like, say you're talking to a woman, right?
Oh, jeez.
Or a man,
And
or anyone.
in my case, a woman. That was unnecessary, Jake. That threw me off. Say you're talking to someone romantically, or that you hope to have a romantic relationship with, and it sounds like his first option is the Vikings. So they're the prettiest girl, guy, or whatever. To
Imagine
him.
thinking the Vikings are the prettiest person.
Imagine being
in the bar.
Imagine being the third option. Imagine talking to someone and you being the third option. Option one doesn't want them. Option two doesn't want them. They're like, hey, your turn. How would you feel about that? Like, I think the Steelers should be kind of ashamed just waiting for him like that.
I also do think, though, this is kind of a bet of the Steelers' own making, though, with how they've handled the quarterback situation for the last couple years. Like, this is what happens, and you're left to pick up some of the pieces. So they've got to navigate out of this. And if Khan is a good enough GM, he'll maybe not figure it out this year, but figure it out. He probably has one more year to solve this.
Maybe next year when Justin Fields is free agent, he fizzles out in New York, and he'll come back and be our hero.
He's got to start doing something if you want to see him in a gold jacket one day. I mean,
doubt
look,
that's gonna happen.
I will agree with you one thing. I am not sure exactly why the Steelers. I mean, what kind of effort did they make to re-sign him this offseason?
I read today that they gave him, or they were willing to give him about what the Jets were, but he was annoyed with the way they handled him last year. So,
Which, fair.
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, they made this bed, and I'm not saying they did it right or wrong, but some of these actions came with repercussions, and now they got to figure it out.
see, people on Twitter are like going on Grok, like the AI thing, and putting Tom Brady in a Steelers uniform and saying, "Let's try it." And I would rather have Tom Brady as an old man quarterback than Aaron Rodgers.
Move.
I would rather Tom Brady as an old man quarterback than Aaron Rodgers.
I still think he's got like 24 touchdowns in him. Yeah, why
Yeah.
not? Let him start in like October. You just have to have a backup quarterback for the first month of the season. Let him just kind of warm his way back in, get through his Fox contract a little bit, decide who the Oakland Raiders quarterback is going to be, and then he can come back.
All right, remind our faithful listeners and viewers of the trivia question.
There was a player in the early 1930s who drove the NFL to want to have a draft and implement that draft because of his bidding war. Who was that player?
I got a four-week winning streak on the line here. I'm going to go with Bronco Nagurski.
I've never heard of this guy before. Stan Kostka. He was a University of Minnesota running back who helped them the undefeated season in 1934.
Well, that goes to show you, I've never heard of him either. So who picked him up, and what did he not do with his NFL career? Thanks, Stan.
He signed a $5,000 contract with the Brooklyn Dodgers on August 25th, 1935.
Brooklyn Dodgers. There you go. A football team that doesn't even exist anymore.
Let's see his
$5,000.
Stan Kostka.
While
cool black.
While
and
he's
white
looking
pictures.
this up, also worth mentioning Ethan Morton.
Yes.
Definitely talk about him. Go for it.
Absolutely.
You
Ethan
covered
Morton, Butler graduate, all-time leading scorer in Butler hoops history. Played in previous March Madnesses with Purdue, and after this past year, he transferred to Colorado State. Colorado State in the tournament. So Ethan Morton, one last ride in March Madness, and we'll see how he does. Do you know who they play? Colorado State.
It's I just had this. Oh, it's just on the tip of my tongue. This is 5th tournament in 5 years. He's going to play Memphis, number 4 Memphis.
I was going to say VMI just to break the silence, but okay, Memphis.
So we got. I mean, that's a decent shot. It's a 13-14 or 13-4 matchup. That's they love those upsets.
I mean, how many times you said 5th straight year for him?
Yep.
But for the vast majority, I mean, when was the last time that Butler County, before Ethan Morton came along, that we had somebody in March Madness? I don't think did Notre Dame make it while Robbie Carmody was there?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. I don't know. Robbie Carmody played at Notre Dame for, I think it was 5 or 6 years, because he had some red shirts. He was injured, but he didn't. Those injuries kind of held him back, and he didn't play that much. But I can't be sure to say whether or not that Notre Dame made the tournament while Robbie was there. But obviously, 5 straight years with a local angle to March Madness is pretty cool when you think about it.
And John has a story on him coming out in Tuesday's paper. It's online Monday already, but it's out in Tuesday's paper for those that are interested.
Stanislaus Kotska had 0 career touchdowns in the NFL. He played 1 year, 5 starts, 9 games, 63 rushes for 249 yards.
Was he then drafted into World War II? How do you?
Now, what was his year? 1930 what?
35, right?
1935. Yeah.
They might not have been in the war yet. So
No, they weren't.
I was just trying to think of why it would cut short that much. Usually,
I'm about to see. Here we go.
Maybe he signed that first big contract and got fat and out of shape.
He
couldn't get out of the tub.
He also had offers from the
Him and
Bears.
Taft together.
He also had offers from the Bears, Packers, Giants, Steelers, and Brooklyn, who he signed with. No information on why he only lasted a year.
Well,
nothing there.
Research it and give us an answer next week. So I'm now 15 and 14.
15 and 14. Well,
yeah, we got this month is 5 years, the anniversary of everything changing, kind of the world shutting down because of COVID. And you were in college at the time. You and I were working for papers, right? You were out in Carlisle.
Yep.
I was here, so we're going to have a little bit of a different perspectives here. Brendan, we're going to go to you first. What do you remember about March of 2020, and exactly how did you figure out that COVID wasn't just a news story on the back end of the newscast?
So I was in college, as he said, at the time. I was writing for both the campus life section of newspaper and the sports section of newspaper. And that January, I think it was, maybe it was early February, I had to cover a comedian's appearance at the student center. There was like 200 women in attendance. I guess he was really big among that portion of the population at the school. And I remember I had my laptop in my lap, and he was making really crude jokes the whole time. And he gets towards the end of the show, and he says something about COVID, or like this like virus that's going around. He's making fun of it. Like, why do people care so much? Blah, blah, blah. And they're worried about it over in Britain and stuff like that. And kind of just passes out of your mind. Like, you've heard about stuff like that before. And then, like, a few months go by. I'm at the time where, like, I'm finally having fun on campus. Like, I'm going to parties. I'm, like, making friends. And I waited, like, 2.5 years up to that point to kind of become my own person in college. And then COVID hits, and they say, hey, it's a 2-week break. You're like, okay, awesome, cool. So they cancel the seasons of the all the sports. Just, I thought it was really premature at that point. I was like, you're going to cancel an entire season because of people being sick for a few weeks. And I remember writing about the girls lacrosse team or women's lacrosse team, which I'd covered 2 years before that, and just them kind of laying out the setting of their coach telling them their season was over. Like the seniors, they had 4 games and boom, it's done. So I remember like hearing like crying on the phone and writing about that. And I still thought that things were going to go back to normal in like a few weeks. I was like, I don't know why this is such a big deal. From then on, like I've told the story of I waited all 4 years in college to write for Slippery Rock football. I never got to do so. I covered the women's tennis team my final semester because of COVID. It just really threw everything kind of into turmoil. Like, I seriously believe that me and my best friend, or one of my best friends, Carl, if we would have been on the same sports staff in college writing about football, we would have won awards. And I feel like there's some empty picture frames that are up in that office that we could have had. So it was a very sad time, like, still looking back.
COVID, Jake, how did it treat you and Mallory in Carlisle?
So I remember knowing about this virus since about early January, sometime after the new year had started. I'd just reading news, and China was going through some stuff, and there were a lot of precincts that were shutting down, quarantining, and then the country shut down. But by that point, it had spread. So I had probably an earlier feeling than some others that, this was serious. Obviously didn't think it was going to be, 2 years of pandemic level serious, but this was going to be, this was going to hit hard at some point. And you and I have a similar experience in this regard, the covering state basketball championship teams that we thought were going to make a run. And I'm covering Mechanicsburg girls basketball, who is in the midst of their best season. That team was really fun to cover. I go to their state second round game in Abington, I think it was. And I go to their AD, and I was like, what do you think the odds are you guys are playing at the end of the week in the quarterfinals? I thought they had a pretty good chance to win that game. They ended up winning on 2 last-second free throws. There's literally like 0.08 seconds left on the clock, if I remember correctly, or 0.8 seconds left on the clock. And Talia Gilliard, who's now playing PSAC, I think at Cal, makes those 2 free throws, wins the game by a point. Mad celebration, the farthest they'd ever been in the state championship. And he's like, I think maybe a week, and they might just pause it for a little bit just to give it a breather and see how it's doing, but we should be back. I got into the office the next day. The NBA season had shut down because of Rudy Gobert testing positive, and they didn't know what to do with that. And I walked into the office and talked with my boss, and I knew that there was some early indications that they thought people with diabetes were more susceptible to COVID and possibly getting more sick. Mallory being type 1, we had to be a little bit careful with that. And now we've come to know that type 2 was a little bit more susceptible, but that's not always a guarantee. Type 1, it didn't seem to be too much of a more susceptible, but being immunocompromised a little bit, she still has to watch no matter what. I went to my boss, and Mallory stayed home that day to work from home, and I said, I think she and I are going to stay home for a little bit. Is that all right? And we'll do everything from the office. And we had the capability to do that. So he said yes. And he's like, just be prepared to be back next week if this, isn't too serious. Beginning of the next week, Lee Enterprises tells all the papers that they own in the country we were going full remote. And by that point, we had the national state of emergency from the president saying that, we're in a pandemic, and all the leagues across the country had shut down. But I remember we got toilet paper about 2 weeks before the pandemic started, just because we needed to get toilet paper. I remember that rush after that. And I actually had
I worked at Sam's Club. I remember people just pouring in to get toilet paper.
I can't imagine. I had a call with my mom a couple weeks into everything, and she was like, yeah, we're getting a little tight. I was like, if you need me to drive out and leave like a 9-roll, outside your house, I will, but just let me know, because Mal and I all stocked up. We'll be good for a couple months here. And we went to the store the next day, that same day that I talked with my boss about staying home. We went to the store that day and just like, we're just going to get some groceries and just huddle inside for a little bit. So we didn't have masks or anything like that. I took a hoodie and I wore it backwards to put the hood over my face, because like, we're just being careful with her. It was really about that. And I ran into one of the basketball coaches that we covered, and he's like, so you guys think this is serious? I was like, hopefully not, but like, everything that we're hearing right now, we just got to be a little bit careful. And like, and he knows Mallory, he knows, the situation and everything. He's like, all right, well, we'll see you in a couple weeks, because he just assumes that I'll be out there for baseball games and stuff like that. So we go and we get a bunch of food, and we're good for a couple weeks. And it was just kind of surreal. Everything shut down. But I've told you, and you guys have heard variations of this story before. I've also said too, like, That year was the year that Mallory's eyes started bleeding, like a month before that. So she was already kind of home a lot because she couldn't see and couldn't do her work as much, and so she couldn't drive. So we kind of were starting to shut down our lives anyway. And when this became like real in April, I think is when we all kind of realized we were in for the long haul with this. I looked at her one day, I was like, if this was going to happen, I'm glad that it's happening now and not like a year or two later when you're coming out of, all these eye injections that we hope will just last a year. And then a pandemic hits, and then we shut down again for another however many months. We thought it was months at that point. The fact that they overlapped with each other made our lives easier because it felt like we were already going to have to seclude a little bit. And now, not that we wanted everyone to suffer with us, but if we had to slow down and the world slows down with us, we're not missing anything. It's FOMO that, we didn't have FOMO with that.
Well, another thing is at that time, like that was when the XFL came back. And I remember I reached out to a blog, and that was like my first real – I wasn't getting paid for it, but I was talking to professional football players, and I thought it was really cool. I talked to Noel Devine at one point, the star West Virginia running back, because he wanted to play in the XFL. And I was reaching out to all these guys and talking to them on FaceTime and writing stories on them. And then COVID came and knocked the XFL out. I was actually really into the XFL at that point. Like I was paying attention to each game, watching them, like writing about them. And when they canceled those seasons, you mentioned like the basketball one, I was at Topgolf that night when all that went down, and it felt like the world was ending. Like it felt like the apocalypse. Mm-hmm. It was such a weird feeling. Like I was out with my friends, and you're getting all these notifications like NBA season's done. Oh, now this is shutting down. This is shutting down. We're like telling each other, like, look at the phone, like look what's happening. And it felt like everything was just like falling apart. And I don't know, that whole time was, like you said, surreal. Like it's weird to look back and think like we had to wear masks all the time, and it was weird being at Sam's Club because you were allowed to be out if you were working or stuff like that, and it was just odd.
The three teams that we had that were still alive when everything got shut down were both teams from North Catholic and Butler boys basketball. And I covered North Catholic's girls' last game before the world stopped. I think it was on March 11th. They played Central Valley in a state playoff game down at North Hills High School. North Catholic obviously won that game. But the thing I remember most about that day is before I went to that game, this is earlier in the day, I was online, and there was a story on Yahoo that said that the NCAA was thinking about either completely canceling March Madness or playing it in empty arenas. Mm-hmm. And I know you said that you were kind of keeping tabs on COVID since like early January. I knew what it was, but even up till that point, I was like, this is not going to blow up into something big. Then I saw that headline about the NCAA and March Madness. I was like, wait a minute. March Madness each year is like literally a multi-billion-dollar business. Yeah. Between ad revenue on TV and all the arenas that they're hosting the games. And I said, if they can do this with the NCAA, what shot does the high school tournament have of sticking around? But just 3 days before that, my son's birthday, March 8th, we had his party at the trampoline park up at the Butler Mall, the Clearview Mall. And the place was packed, parents, kids, nobody had a mask on. Nobody was taking precautions. There was no sign that on the doors or on the windows of the place that said, blah, 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 as far as being precautionary about COVID. This was literally 5 days before March 13th when they shut everything down. Yeah. 5 days before. And I told you, I just want to bring this up too. I mentioned this the other day. The lasting image that I'll have of COVID was on TV. This was probably, I'm guessing, early April, maybe the second week of April. On the news, they showed a refrigerator truck. I don't think I told you this, outside of a hospital in New York.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I think I saw the same thing. Like I had to watch for classes of like media literacy and stuff of Fox and CNN where I would have to watch things like that. And I remember seeing
the refrigerator truck was there because the hospital itself could not handle any more dead bodies. Yep. It was completely full. So they had to bring in refrigerator trucks to store these bodies. So anybody out there that says COVID was just, it's the flu. No, it's not the flu. I've never seen people being piled up their dead bodies in a refrigerator truck because the hospital can't store them anywhere else. That was crazy.
This is by no means a political statement. I think it's just a human, like, to me, this is a human statement. Like, please get vaccinated whenever you can. I used to not get the flu shot at all because I'm a healthy 20-something-year-old guy with no medical history of anything.
Like me.
Like you.
I don't get the flu shot.
I now get it. Like, COVID kicked me in the butt to do that because Mallory is more susceptible to the flu, and she'd been nudging me for years. Please do this for me. Please do this for me. I get the flu shot every year. I get the COVID update every year. I just got the tetanus shot when I turned 30 because that, you need to do that every 10 years and all that. Just get the vaccines. Like, we're seeing a measles outbreak in West Texas and Oklahoma right now, New Mexico. Like, it's about just protecting yourself, protecting your friends and your family, and whenever you can, just doing something small and decent for others. Just decent.
Better safe than sorry.
I'll tell you what, like, I've had COVID twice. Mallory and I both had it twice because she gets it, and then like 3 days later I get it, and we followed the same path each time. When it hits me like a truck for 36 hours. It is unlike anything else I've ever gotten. And if I didn't have those vaccines, I don't want to know what that would have been like, because I'm sitting there just like, I just want to curl up and fall asleep for the next 20 days until this is completely gone. It hits me like a truck.
Well, John got COVID. Darlene, they were in the hospital for a while. So
yeah, and that you were just
I was just starting,
brought on full time, like literally about 6 weeks before all that happened. So some bad memories, but obviously nobody here. I actually had a distant cousin whose husband died of COVID, but nobody like immediate family was.
Thankfully not.
Yeah,
I had some people get pretty sick, but I remember they had the COVID those vaccine hubs that they set up in different counties. The one of the handful that Cumberland County had was set up 2 blocks from my apartment. I walked there both times to get the first and second shot, and I remember walking. It was in an old Kmart/Sears that was in the process of being converted into U-Haul, and they stopped obviously COVID stopped the reconstruction, or not reconstruction, the remodeling renovation of it. And a year later, when the vaccines came out, they took the part that hadn't been used yet and turned it into this vaccine depot. And I walk in, and it's hundreds of people, all masked and everything. And I was just like, I think we might, like, it was a nice sunny spring day. I remember that. I walked out, and I was on the phone with someone for a little bit, and I just remember going, this feels better. Like, and we had some good experiences too in COVID. Like, one of my friends in college who I had lost touch with for a little bit, we were in the same fraternity. He started Quarantine Quizzo. He had been on College Jeopardy at one point and became a little bit of like a heartthrob for a certain segment of the Twitter population. And so he started Quarantine Quizzo, where we just play Jeopardy every Sunday. And it started becoming a thing where we'd all give in like $5, and then the winner would take half of that, and he would then donate it to whatever charity. It was usually a bunch of like local shelters and whatever food supply stuff and anything that was kind of helping out the cause at that time. And it was one of those fun things. Every Sunday I'd come home, or I'd be home because I didn't have work that day, and at like 7 o'clock we'd start Quarantine Quizzo and have a couple beers, and I'd chat with my friends on Zoom or whatever it was for an hour and a half, and like it was one of the nice silver linings of that experience.
2020 was pretty surreal.
Yeah.
Let's hope we never have to live through that again.
Absolutely.
We'll see you next week. We encourage you to subscribe to the Butler Eagle YouTube channel and Apple or Spotify podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Alter Eagle Podcast and at Butler Eagle News. Goodbye.